Excellent. All right. Well, might as well get started. Okay, so first of all, I would like to acknowledge the First Peoples of Australia as the first artists, the first storytellers, the first communities, and the first creators of culture. Your stories and experiences are the heart of this country. And if you haven't heard about this beautiful artwork done for the Australian Sports Commission, please visit our website and have a look at the video by boxer Brad Hoare. It's called Kinship, and the story behind it is just gorgeous. So please check it out. So I'm Belle Hogg. I am a Willis participant myself this year, and because I didn't have enough work to do, I thought I would volunteer to give a presentation on this topic. It actually came from a need, which was a few people had reached out and were asking, were very curious about design thinking and human-centered design. And I thought, well, this would be a great way to tell more people about it, and hopefully you'll be as interested and passionate as I am, and probably already do a lot of these things without even putting any kind of label to it. So a little bit about me. I've worked in various service design, human-centered design roles, Services Australia, Department of Health, Digital Transformation Agency, Australian Public Service Commission. And I came to the Sports Commission about a year and a half ago, and this job, came and I saw it and I thought sport is, oh my God, it was one of those things, and we all know it. It's one of those passion type jobs. I saw this pop up and I was like, I'm so drawn to the meaningfulness and the purpose behind getting kids and all kinds of people involved in sports, and so here I am. I've been involved in sport as a participant, a daughter, a mum, an auntie, fan, coach, manager, volunteer in various sports, and I've felt all kinds of experiences. There's been the frustrations, there's been confusion, but there's also, of course, all the wonderful things in between. And today I'm going to go through basically, it's really hard to do in 2 hours. I was kind of thinking about what would I talk about, because, this could be like a whole week-long course, really. And so hopefully this gives everyone a good taste um, and an understanding as well. So human-centered design, of course, can't, it cannot begin without a deep understanding of the people that you're designing for. So, empathy is a big part of being human-centered, and hopefully there was a link to a really cool little video by Brene Brown, which is a great video that I use sometimes, that was sent out by Elizabeth. So hopefully you got that. In order to sort of get insights about people, you need to sort of start with empathizing and understanding needs and thoughts and emotions and, of course, motivations of people. This is a really great quote by Tom Kelly from IDEO. And IDEO are one of the sort of leaders in human-centered design. If you wanted to, I've got lots of resources that I can share afterwards. Empathy means challenging your preconceived ideas and setting aside your sense of what you think is true in order to learn what actually is true that people aren't conscious of. And another little saying that I say a lot to, myself and others, your experience is your experience. I cannot argue with your experience. And so that's why it's super important. And sometimes what we assume will work for others doesn't at all. So, I've worked in so many government departments that will say, we know what they need, we know what they want. And actually, yeah, look, sport probably is a place that we do understand people actually quite well, but it's amazing when you go out and you observe and you talk to people, the things that you find out, and it's not quite what you thought. So the biggest part of human-centered design, of course, is the mindsets that go with that. They are absolutely core. So although we have tools and, there is a process that you go through, and the mindsets without those, very, very hard. Creative confidence is one of those, believing that everyone is creative. And I don't mean we can all draw a beautiful portrait of someone or anything like that. I'm thinking, this sort of approach to the world and having that ability to come up with creative solutions to big problems. Empathy, I've touched on that. Embracing ambiguity, as hard as it is, when you are starting from sort of a place of not knowing the answer to a problem, it's quite uncomfortable. And the whole process in user research, actually, every single time I do a project, no matter how long I've been doing it, I have to uncomfortably sit in a space where, oh my God, I feel so dumb right now. I do not understand this, especially if you're launched into some other little world like IT or something that maybe you don't understand, or it can be quite tricky. So being able to just go, it's okay that I don't understand right now, and make it. One of the things that, I find quite often is we're so used to polishing things that we are almost too scared sometimes to just put things out there. And honestly, this is one of those mindsets in human-centered design when, if you want to make your ideas real, sometimes you just need to start with, a sketch on a page, or grabbing a box and putting that on your head or something and putting something on it, as crazy as that sounds, and going, does that work? Learning from failure. This failure is a funny word and a lot of people don't like the use of it sometimes, but that's our best lessons of all, is when things don't work. Not that we don't want things to work, but we would like them to not work earlier rather than later. So that's why we do things in human-centered design, to sort that stuff out of the way earlier. And I can't emphasize this one enough. That's why I've said it 3 times. Iterate, iterate, iterate. It's about not putting something out there and going, done, it's all good now. If that was the case, we'd still be carrying the phone pack on our shoulders, and various other things that have morphed over time. And of course, design is inherently optimistic. So just believe that that progress is even an option, because when we can go into something and think, nah, not going to happen, been there, done that, didn't work. It's optimism is another one of those mindsets. And human-centered design, it's based on evidence. And I've had to start shifting some of my words over the many years, because I've had sometimes executive and things, and you might face this as well, where it sounds all a little bit fluffy and we don't have time to talk to people. But at the end of the day, it's actually about gathering evidence. And this is a fantastic diagram by a place called TAXI, which is the Australian Centre for Social Innovation. And it just shows you, human-centered design as a risk mitigation, really. Like what I kind of said before, you can spend piles of money and go, we're going to build the best membership system ever. here, take all the money. But if you haven't actually thought through how the people will engage with it, will it work? How do they use other things? Is there something better? All of those things. It can actually, it can be costly. It can also be embarrassing, and particularly from a government perspective. And I know everyone's not from government, but using people's money to make something, a HCD process, mitigates that risk of putting something out there that the old build it and they'll come. And so often we do things in silos or sections. You can do this thing and that team over there does that. And we sort of don't think of that overall experience for not just customers, but also staff or volunteers. What's the experience overall? And asking that, stopping and asking, how is that overall experience can really make a difference. And to think even bigger again, and more sort of sustainably, how does this fit into the overall sporting experience? Because people don't generally just engage in one thing or even one sport. As a mum of 3, I know that, my 3 kids are not going to choose the same sport to engage with, or the one that I've done, or, that we all go off into different directions, like these people that I've drawn here. So, someone might be a high performance coach, but they also might be a cyclist themselves, or, dad here has enrolled, daughter in football, but also coaches, but it's also a cricket umpire, so in a completely different sport. So how they're sort of interacting between those things and is a big deal. And this is a fantastic diagram. Again, not something I've come up with or anything. It is a worldwide used diagram in human-centered design, but it's around what's desirable, possible, and viable. And they call that spot in the middle, that sweet spot of where innovation occurs, or something great design. And we start with what's desirable. So asking questions along the way, like, will this fit, and will this fulfill a need? Will it fit into people's lives? Will they actually want it? Will it appeal to them? Those kinds of things. And I'll refer to that a bit over this time as well. The double diamond, it's the human-centered design approach, was developed by the UK Design Council many years ago. And keep in mind, although this looks linear, and there's an end point, it's important to remember again that it's quite iterative, and there may be parts that you want to loop back. You might go, actually, that wasn't the problem at all, and we just need to sort of find out more. And also, we might come to an end and deliver something, but you need to measure that, and you need to re-loop and come back and say, okay, well, did it work, and could we make it even better? And of course, at the center of all of this is the people that you're designing for, and hopefully with. So as I said, this could be a week-long course, so I'm just going to take you through some of the different tools that you could have a bit of a try of. So we're going to switch over to, I'm just going to switch over to the Miro board, and I'm going to pop that in the chat in case you didn't get that email. So I'll just exit this one. And pop this in the chat for those that haven't got it. If you can't get onto Miro, feel free to use the chat as an option as well, or you can go off mute, and that's cool also. But I thought we'd just have a little dabble. Miro is an amazing tool. It's a collaborative tool that allows people to sort of come in and work together. I use it all the time. So I thought to get started, I've just popped a problem in here. It's one that I've worked on before. But if we were looking at the topic of, say, health and wellbeing of older Australians, here's some facts that came up. After 55, all men are considered at risk of a heart attack. And then I learnt that women over 65 are actually equal to men, and often they're programmed to justify their health issues. Oh, I've just got a bad back because, been busy, or maybe that was the bed. And quite often do things like might put their family first, my age group entering that looking after parent type of age. Also, general good health habits are helping heart attack victims get by more quickly. Of course, that's a bit of a no-brainer. And attitudes and behaviours of types of people that don't admit or want to go to the doctors. So there is types of people that are like that. This is purely just an example so that we can have a bit of a dabble with this. So you have a problem. How that comes to you can be various means. Quite often it's someone from above says, we've got this problem, can you work out a solution to it? But before we get to that, we need to think about who's involved in this problem. So I'm going to get you, now that I've talked through that, what kinds of people would be involved if we were to go and find out and do some discovery. And I'm going to show you how to do this. So for those that haven't used Miro, you can drag a post-it note in and you can double click on it and you can just start typing. So have a bit of a go. I'm going to lock that so it doesn't move. So yeah, it's basically a brainstorming tool. Lets you think about different users, stakeholders with this particular problem. So for example, what might be a user in this? And I'm happy to put some in here if anybody wants to just come off mute. Maybe older Australians themselves, whatever we class as older Australians. Yep, we've got some health professionals. And I tend to think of internal stakeholders. Yeah, this is an interesting one because internal can be internal to our business. It also could be, you can think of, you can change this map to different things. So quite often I'll refer to front of stage and back of stage. So front of stage is all those people that the user interacts with. And then back of stage is the people doing work that allows that to happen. So we've got a few things coming in here. So users might be women, it might be older Australians, we've got carers, we've got friends, family members, depending on what it is that we're working on. And that problem I hadn't defined much. And quite often when you have a problem, you don't know if it's the actual problem yet. So this is always a good living document as well that you can come back to and say, actually, there's a little bit more to that. And you could almost, in some instances, depending on what we call old, family members could move in there, or carers could move in there as a user My mum has dementia. She wouldn't be a user because I would have to help her to do something herself. So that's just a little activity, a little quick one, just to show you a stakeholder actor map. And the other thing at this point that I often start off with, another tool to share, is what do we already know about this problem? You don't necessarily start with a blank slate. So it might be, what do we know? And I'm talking about hand on heart, I've got evidence and I know this is fact. Because we've all been there with a bit of hearsay. Oh yeah, no one likes the coffee that we have on Saturday mornings. And then it's actually just one person's opinion and you find out, no, that's what you thought. So we would put that in what we think we know. We're not going to use this tool right now, but I thought I would show that one, and it's as quick as throwing a bit of butcher's paper up on the wall, drawing a line and saying, okay, guys, let's just get it out. What do we know? What do we think we know? And what do we want to know? And sometimes this sounds bizarre, but you don't know what you don't know either, and you'll discover things along the way, and that's what is so wonderful about this technique as well. I'm just going to pop back in here. And thank you for participating in that. Okay, so moving into discovery, the kinds of methods in discovery, there's a variety of them. I tend to lean towards user interviews, and I don't tend to make people come to me, because I find that when people come to you and they're sitting in your office, or depending on where you are, what they say and what they actually do can be quite different. So there is a variety of things that you can do here. You can observe, you can shadow a user, you can you can experiment with this one without being creepy, of course. You can say to one of your colleagues, can I observe you purchasing coffee at the coffee shop or something? And when you put yourself in that different role, it's actually incredible what you'll pick up, rather than you're just not really thinking about it. So shadowing, watching, jumping on the bus with someone, those kinds of things. Of course, there's also desktop research, which goes with this as well, and I'll talk about quant and qual insights in a sec. There's diary studies, so you can actually, you might get someone to diarise what they're doing. That would probably be a good one, and probably happens sometimes with athletes. Can you just record? What are you, what are you doing? What are you, without being too, you would obviously explain what you're doing it for. Focus groups, I don't overly love them, but it depends on the way you do them, because sometimes you can get that group think and then next minute everyone's agreeing with them. User interviews definitely would be my go-to. I just learn so much from people. Another one would be ethnography, which would be I'm going down to a sports field and I'm actually going to be immersed in what's going on in a particular role with that person. So quant and quantitative and qualitative research. Quantitative methods, they're often big base, so think things like surveys, structured questions and answers. They measure like how many, their numbers, statistics, those kinds of things. So an example here, there's free ice cream, and we find out only 1 in 30 take the free ice cream, which is really interesting. But then qualitative, which I think they both go hand in hand, is more a smaller base. It's that sort of face-to-face conversation, understanding the what and the why and the how. So, for example, on the ice cream one, and what did you feel when you saw the free ice cream? Well, I was excited, but I was also a little bit scared. And why was that? And then you might actually find out that only 1 in 30 took them because the dairy intolerance group was there, or I'm just making that up, but there could be very good reasons and feelings towards that. So in discovery or exploration, it's all about learning from people. So, if you're doing interviews, treat them as an expert. You're interviewing them, about their life and they're the expert in that life. And be curious and always give that sort of respect that they deserve. And it's important too to learn from experts. So there's going to be times when you need more context, or you might need some history on something that a typical kind of interview could give. So you might need to lean in on experts as well. And of course, immerse yourself in context. I think there's no better way to understand the people you're designing for than immersing yourself. So some surfing research I did, for example, poor me, I had to do it on beaches. But it was very important that I go and actually see what's happening. There isn't actually a clubhouse or place to put your equipment, or lots of kinds of things that you see and observe. And it's easier said than done, but checking our bias along the way is really important, because that can actually influence the outcome. This is a great little comic. I've heard the rhetoric from both sides, and it's time to do my own research on the real truth. And we click literally on the first link that agrees with what I already believe. And sometimes we don't even realize that we do that. And as human-centered designers, we don't really say, what do you want? It's often comes, from designing from a need, because what people say and what they really do, sometimes they don't line up, and what people need versus they want can be quite different. So things like, tell me about you, or how's that experience? What was hard? What was easy? How do you feel about that? And sometimes, or all times, one question can lead to another. It's a whole other skill in itself, user research, of not going down too many sort of rabbit holes, but it's amazing what asking a couple of questions can lead to this other information, which can become absolute gold. And of course, a tip here, ask open-ended questions and avoid those leading ones, like, it's a really good membership system, isn't it? Don't you think? That's quite leading. And then, of course, we can ask questions like, do you like going to sport events? And it might be, yep. But if I say, how do you feel about sporting events? Oh, actually, they just got such a good vibe. And yeah, lots of information can come from just changing the way you ask something. So moving into the next part, and I might just pause for a sec. Does anyone have any questions? I can't actually see everyone, so hold on, I'll open that. No questions at this stage? Feel free to ask any time. I don't mind interrupting.
Hey,
do you have a question?
Belle, yeah, a quick one. It's a bit about the logistical side, and I know you've brought some really great rigor to our work in that regard, but I think you mentioned, like, just make sure people know what you're using the information for. Will you be able to share with the group some of those techniques to, get consent on that as well?
Yeah, it's a really, really important one. And I was like, how much should I delve into this? Because there's, discussion guides, recruitment. But yes, ethics is a really, really good point. And, there's lots of information around this, and I can send this out as well. But when you are it's really important when we share people's stories, they own those stories, and we need to be very delicate with those and make sure we've got consent to do so. So it could be as simple as making sure you use very plain language to explain what you're doing and how their information will be used. So if I'm going to share what you tell me with my organisation, that's one thing. But if I'm then going to go and give that report to put it on the public website, that's a whole other issue. So being very clear about what you're doing with it, getting them to consent to that or not consent, and also having the ability to withdraw that at a later stage. And I attach a code to a person when I capture data about them in interviews, because one, I don't want their name on anything or any identifying information. And two, if they do withdraw later, I can just go 002 search and I can get rid of all that information and not include it. I'm always will let people know as well that the information that I gather from them will be an amalgamation. So it won't be, Sarah said, Sarah from the Sports Commission told me, blah, it doesn't really quite go like that. Yeah, so that's very, very important. And of course, minors is a whole other topic again. Julia, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, just more of a comment just in relation to some of the things you were talking about there about questioning and listening. One of the projects I'm fortunate enough to lead is actually to bring some of the models or personal interaction tools that they use in the AIS Developing Others course, bringing them to life via animation. So this is the start of this project, but the first three are up on the ASC YouTube. I've just shared it in the chat. So it's how to ask powerful questions, listening with intent, so moving to empathic listening from so the 5 levels of listening, and the tell-ask continuum. They're more for just good coaching conversations. We'll be developing some support material with these, and there'll be others that we're developing around empathy and psychological safety down the track. So it's just as another tool and just to be aware of them. That's all.
That's amazing. Thank you, Julia, for sharing that. Miranda?
Thanks, Belle. I do have a question. It goes back to one of your first slides. I really love, and within our team, we really try and take this approach wherever we can. But one thing that I really struggle with, so I'm wondering if you have any tips, is that part around iterate, and how that then seems to couple with our organisational project management planning, etc. Like sometimes it's like we think this is where we're heading, but part of that is we need to understand, and it's often changes. So being able to retrospectively go back and be like, well, this is what we thought was happening, but now it's here. I struggle with reconciling those two. I don't know if you have any tips.
It's a very hard one, especially if it isn't built, if human-centered design, which it often isn't built into a PMO as such. I have been at places like Services Australia where they've got all the tools and brought them into the project management office and process. But of course, yeah, if you get to a point where you're like, oh, actually, that wasn't quite right, I do think that you use the evidence you've gathered to go back to the decision makers. And one tip that I would give here is something that I've used for many, many years is sponsor meetings. And it is making sure that you have regular catch-ups and showcases with the decision makers. I will literally stand up at a whiteboard, and say, this is, I story tell, this is where we're up to. We've reached this point, and actually we might need to pivot because we're finding that the problem that we were actually exploring is actually another one. There's not a snail problem. There's a lack of ducks or something. And you've got the decision makers there, but they haven't been brought in 3 months later. They've sort of come along for the ride. So I would say showcases, sponsor meetings would be good ones. Getting people to come to those sponsor meetings can be another thing. But if you make it the way you work at the beginning, like, we're going to do this bit of work, but it's key that to continue the piece of work, the decision makers must come in regularly, and we say, okay, we just found out this, and thoughts, what are your thoughts? And I will literally capture them on a whiteboard and say, have I heard that right? It's actually doctors that we need to talk to now, not, hopefully that. I'm happy to chat more about that, Miranda, offline.
No, do you know what? It just makes me feel better for the fact that you've kind of suggested that it can be difficult trying to get both working. So that makes me feel fine. It's not just me going like, what? Yeah, thanks.
No, because everyone wants a deliverable, don't they? And there's a deadline.
And it's nearly then like you're trying to anticipate what you think people might want from a deliverable. And half the time, obviously, it's wrong. But you're trying to go, well, then the budget depends on this, and this is a bit of a flow on. But okay, no, that's really useful. Thanks, Belle.
And discovery can be a dirty word for some people. Like, they're like, we don't have time for discovery. We don't need to talk to people. We know what we're doing. When it actually, like I said, risk mitigation and whatnot. Thank you. Amazing questions. So moving into define, we sort of start to converge now, and we're finding patterns and themes in what we've discovered. So from all those user interviews. So again, on my surfing piece, the kinds of outcomes or outputs that you might get from doing that could be some insights. Again, it's in a whole other presentation of how you synthesize all that information, but you've gathered all that data, you've found some themes, you found, oh, there's actually a whole area around this. Here's some quotes. Again, the quotes don't have the person's name on it. They might have a code, or that could be about it. And it also brings out pain points, but also those pain points, we need to see them as opportunities, and that's where we can go. It's almost like I'm seeking that feedback through this. So a pain point is this thing, for example, that illustration there that shows the different tasks that this young girl does when she's wanting to become a coach. All of those things, and they're all separate websites, and they're all separate logins and different experiences. And, at the end of the day, she just wants to work and loves sport. Journey mapping is another tool that will bring out, and again, helps with that storytelling. So if I'm having a showcase with decision makers, or even the people that you're designing for or with, you might get together with them and you say, I've captured this. Have I captured that right? Is that the steps? Is there steps missing? So there's some of the outputs that might come out at this stage. And I'll talk about it a lot, but sharing stories is human. It's how we connect. So this is another example where I wanted to just show that experience of someone's going to a sport event. But I'm not just showing the at the event, which quite often we look at game day experience or those kinds of things. But what about the bits leading up to it? What about the bits afterwards? It turned out the experience of after a sporting event was equally as important. If you leave the Raiders game and there's nowhere to go, there's no nowhere to continue being a fan, you just go home and the experience changes. Just an example. And in this develop stage, so now we're going wide again, and we're gathering lots of ideas, and as crazy as they are, sometimes it's best to just get them all out, because the more ideas, the better. And this is a great quote. We've all seen this one before, I'm sure. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. I mean, who would have thought we would be serving ourselves at the supermarket checkout once upon a time? I wouldn't have. Or doing our banking on our phone. I'm showing my age in remembering. I remember my parents saying, "What is this thing that spits money out at the wall?" It's crazy. And then there's examples of ideas out there that come from needs and from data, and they test if they're going to solve a problem. So I came across this one, defib in your street, and going back to the heart problems before. So they realised in this postcode in Victoria, it has the highest number of sudden cardiac arrests. And so they've come up with this idea, I guess, to test out of people willing to host a defibrillator at their home. Another example, I just think it's super cool in some really weird way, but, I am a woman after all. Having an app where you can find where the nearest toilet is, and it tells you if it's got accessible, if it's accessible and all kinds of things. Is it kid friendly? Another example of coming from a need, which is the National Continence Program with the Department of Health, I think. Okay, so we're going to jump into what we call an ideation mindset, so coming up with ideas. So I'm going to go back into the board again. And so we've gathered, you've gone out and you've done interviews and you gather lots of things. This is a really good tool as well, just quickly, called Story Hooks. It's just a really quick way to capture what you might have had an interview. So, who did you meet? What's some things that stood out? We talked about these things. What do they care about? I found that tool very good. And then you would have, you might have things like personas. So a persona is generally an amalgamation of this type of person. And that's an example. Their personas can come in all kinds of ways. You might do a persona that's based on digital, different digital things they use, etc. Archetypes is another tool. So this is an example on a pathology project I did, where you actually realise after your discovery that there's types of people. So in a health perspective, there's avoiders, there's acceptors, and there's seekers. There's those people that Google everything. And then people that just go, yeah, doctor said do that, I'll do it, and then avoiders, which is probably my husband. And then, there can be other tools that you can use where you can sort of go through scenarios and stories and say, well, Susan, she's a striving seeker. And you can start to just have a scenario or a story where you can share what that actually means in your world of what you're talking about. And in this example, it was pathology. Another tool is an empathy map, just as simple as, says, thinks, does, feels. Might be some quotes, what do they think about that? What do they actually do? And how do they feel about it? That's all right if the board moves for anyone, just do a Control Z. It will undo it. I should have locked it. Sorry. Okay, so the next part in Develop, when you are going to start doing some brainstorming, which of course is the next tool, to get to brainstorming, the best springboard to come up with ideas is to have a really good problem statement. So, you know, there's nothing worse than so give me your ideas, and that's it. Just give me your ideas. If you have a well sort of defined problem statement that you can come up with, because humans love coming up with solutions. We do it every day, workarounds and things. And in fact, it's the first thing that I have to sort of say in workshop is we're not coming up with solutions yet. Hold it. But in this stage, we are very early ones. So I thought we'll have another bit of a play here, and a how might we statement helps you to develop that kind of problem statement to get, you know, springboard lots of ideas. So how might we do something? Put in verb here. So support, enable, deliver a particular persona. So it might be coaches, volunteers, you know, parent to do this thing. I've got a couple of just having a little bit of a go at it. How might we encourage older Australians to be part of local sports communities to feel valued and needed? That's one. How might we make sport more flexible to allow more participation in older Australians or for older Australians? How might we communicate to our sport participants and families ways they can get older family members involved? With those three how might we's in mind, we're going to now have a go at some brainstorming. So throw anything you want in there. The brainstorming rules: defer judgment, encourage wild ideas, build on the ideas of others, stay focused. One conversation at a time is usually when you're in a workshop and you say, tell me about that. Visual, not going to get you to be visual necessarily today, and go for quantity, because if you sit there just going, what's the best idea I've got, it might be terrible, but at least if you have 100 of them, there could be, you know, 3 great ones in there. I would also say with the deferred judgment, it is actually a really important one, because I've seen in so many workshops where someone puts an idea, or they're brave enough to put their hand up and say, we could try this thing, and someone else says, we've tried that, or it won't work, and they basically poo-poo all over their idea, and we don't want to do that at this stage. We just want to get them all out there. So have a little bit of a go. If you can't access Miro, throw them in the chat. I'll chuck them in. And I am going to put on, let's say, 2 minutes. Let's see what we can get done. Okay, that's time is up. And in just 2 minutes, there are all the ideas we've gathered. Like so many ideas there, which is absolutely incredible. Let's have a look at a few of them. Yeah, look, don't assume everyone knows how to engage with sport. So we could say to something like that, so how could we, another how might we could even come out of that, of how do we, engage and show people how to get involved. Travel to them, absolutely brilliant. Go to where the people are at. Why are we making them come to us? Some great things here. Great talent pool of volunteers. Love that. Fantastic. So we've got so many ideas that are coming out there. Have intergenerational games. Awesome idea. Yeah, fantastic. So you can see that there's lots of ideas that are coming out there. And I mean, round 2, I would then, and you can take these away if you like as an example to play with later. Round 2, I would then go, okay, we've just done 2 minutes. Now we're going to try again, and maybe we'd use a different colour post-it so we can see what comes out in the second round. Or you can get people to add to ideas. So you might actually go around and say, okay, tell me more about that. What does that mean? And that's where you give that sort of one conversation at a time, because quite often when we put something on a post-it, it doesn't always make sense to the other person, but you can talk that through. And then the next round, I would get people to add to an idea. So we've talked about them. This is what's come out. And I get them to start with and, because when we start with but, well, I know that when someone comes to me and they say, but, yeah. So if you start with and, you're saying, and I'm going to add to that idea because here's going to make it even better. You could try this as well. It's going to switch back. So the next part, as I said, I like to do the and, where you add to that idea so you can gather more and more. And of course, we've just done that really quickly in a couple of minutes. You could spend a lot more time, of course. And they can get to a point where you've got lots and lots of things. And so now we've got heaps of those ideas and you think, oh, that's great. What are we going to do with all this? There's actually different ways that you can work out what idea you're going to go with. And that depends on your problem, of course, that you need to solve. And do keep coming back to that, because it's important to say, is that idea solving it? You would also do what's called affinity mapping, or let's just put it in a really plain word, just clustering and theming, where you start getting them and you cluster them together. I think there's something around communication here. I think there's something here around something else. And that is also adding to that idea to become let's call it a mega idea, for example. And then some ways that you can do as well is you could do voting, as plain and simple as voting. So in Miro there, I can click on a voting tool that gives as many votes as I want to someone. And I can put a time on that and they could choose which ones that they want to go with. Of course, I think if you were truly co-designing, it would be actually great to have the people that you're designing for with you. So in that example, I would love in the room to have some older Australians or families, and just sort of say, let's come up with ideas. And voting can also be, you know, you can do sticky dots. I've even printed off paper money in workshops before, just like, you know, whatever, sport bucks or whatever you want to call it. Don't actually photocopy real currency, might get in trouble. And if you said to someone, here is, you know, $1,000, and I'm going to give that to you in, you know, $100 notes. If you could invest your $1,000 in an idea or ideas, what would you lean towards? Sometimes putting that spin on it can actually get people to think more about, oh, okay, I actually have to make a decision here. Other ways, which I've used in a recent workshop, is a now and a wow idea. So maybe you could use different colours to say, I'm going to go for a now idea, which is something I'd implement. You know, I'd do this tomorrow. It's not hard. It's going to be of great value to users. And then a wow idea might be, this is an absolute game changer, but it's going to take us 5 years to get there. In which case, it's not off, you know, you still would want to possibly do that. You might just find that you do a smaller version to test it. And then, of course, your selection of top ideas, I would come back to that desirable part as well. You know, is this going to fill a need? Will it fit into people's lives? Is it actually what they want? Will it appeal to them? Those kinds of questions. And then eventually you find patterns where people go, yeah, actually. So the next part of that is then I would go to what's called think to build. So we've got this idea and we think it's kind of like this. So let's just do some kind of brief description about it. Who's it for? What are they trying to, you know, what are we trying to learn by creating this very early prototype? So that's kind of your testing stuff, like, well, you know, we want to know, would people change by using this, or would they actually, do they even want to come down and hang around with kids screaming down at the Oval? You know, we don't know. So there could be things in there that you're trying to learn by doing this. Then you could put some key features as well. So it does this, you know, it could also do this. Yeah, there's various things that you can put in there depending on what it is. You might have, and I have this little square here because you can put a Post-it note in there and you can say, do a visual of it. And how someone represents that visually, as scary as that sounds, stick figures welcome, is kind of cool as well in those early stages. If they want to, you can journey map something as well in a very, very simplistic way. It's probably more like a storyboard of, it would work this way. You do this thing, then you do that, then this happens. And that's an example there from a recent workshop as well. Which then, so that example that I just showed, then became this, which was an early prototype for a fan experience that they could put these VR goggles on, and they could choose a sport game, and they would be immersed into the role of the, say, referee, or someone that they choose to be in the role of, and they have to make decisions on the spot, etc. It sort of, yeah, I won't go into that idea too much, but that's just an example of where they've gone, I think it works like this, let's just cut out some stuff, let's get some paper. They then got a person outside of the workshop, so a sport person, to come in. Can you put this on and imagine this world? What do you think? Tell us about that. So I've put this in here just as an example of prototyping. So why do we prototype? learn most of all. How might our idea work? It's amazing what you learn yourself just creating the prototype. Is our idea working for users? And also about that communication piece, because you then find yourself, oh, I'm trying it, I'm putting something out there, I need to communicate what this thing does. So some of the kinds of prototypes I can tell you about, descriptive type prototypes, so journey maps I've mentioned, storyboards. This is an example at the bottom here where it says staff member, where we had an idea at Digital Transformation and we wanted to test that idea. So I drew a story of, okay, so you hear about this thing, and I actually just threw questions in the storyboard that we wanted to learn about this. Will it work for you? How do you think you might hear about this or find this? This tool could be used for something like website or content or comms. You know, you're doing this, put yourself in this situation. You could even just talk and not even show something. It just helped me to tell the story and to ask those questions and remember. Physical, so another example, physical can, again, it's cheap, super cheap. You can get some paper and you can draw screens if it's going to be an app. You could, like that person before, you could make a pretend VR just to get people thinking that way. Another one is you could just have cardboard that's a phone, for example, and you thread through bits of paper. Okay, so what would you do now? Where would you go? Would that make sense to you? So you're sort of asking questions as you go along. Embodied. This is very uncomfortable for a lot of people, especially when you mention role play. But I've done a few examples of this and it is so powerful. An example is we were redesigning Centrelink shop fronts as drop-ins that would be like little pop-up stores in shopping centres. And so we actually got cardboard boxes, and in the main area of where everyone enters into the government building that we worked in, we set up boxes and pretend printer and, you know, those kinds of things. And people actually just walked through and experienced it and said, oh, no way. Because we were thinking like a customer. I was thinking as Belle the mum, I'm walking in here, oh my gosh, this is very not private. All kinds of things come up through those very early prototypes. I've also done similar to that photo above at the top there, not necessarily with a screen, but I've done like a narrator type storytelling, and someone is just sitting on a chair or, you know, kicking a ball or doing something, and you're telling the story, and you can stop and reflect back to people to say, okay, at this point, what do you think about that? So that's a really good one as well. Next would be tell someone about it. So this is the testing part. You want to get feedback from people on what's working, what's not working, again, because you don't want to roll something out and then it doesn't work at all. It's terrible. It's embarrassing. This is an example, a real life example as well, where I made this card set, which again was on heart attack information and learning, and I made this card game and I tested it with a men's shed, and just them having a play with it and I don't understand those instructions, or are we doing this right? Or, oh my gosh, you know, the different things that come out. You're learning so much with that very early prototype. So we test to get user feedback on our ideas, stretch our thinking, because we can build and improve on ideas. As much as we like to think we've got the best idea in the world, sometimes someone can just go, wouldn't you just do that? Or could you do that as well? And you're like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes it even better. You can compare, evaluate, prioritise the concepts. So what features are we going to make now versus later, which can inform that sort of roadmap type thing as well. And again, as I mentioned before about co-design, involving people anyway along that process will get that sort of buy-in, apart from the human centre factor of you designing, you know, with them. People tend to support what they create. So inviting people in as soon as possible, and that includes the people around you. If you're, you know, in a team or something, and again, like we were talking about before with decision makers, take decision makers to user interviews, or you might need to tell them not to jump in and ask questions necessarily, but you know, getting people involved early and along the way makes a big difference. It's incredible when I've done testing or invited people in for brainstorming sessions. They will often say, thank you. Thank you so much for even thinking of me and involving me in this. This has been incredible. And they've got gold as well. You know, they bring it. The planning of prototype testing. So you really need to think about the feedback that you need, decide how you're going to run your testing. What are the tasks, experiences, elements that you want to test? Who are you going to test it with? You know, for example, you might have, again, some decision makers where you might just want to run this idea by them because it doesn't tie in with your strategic goals, or because that is reality, that there is a part that is around what aligns to our budget and all those kinds of things at the end of the day. But even getting that buy-in from executive can be as simple as, we're going to present, you know, we're going to pitch this to you. And I use the Shark Tank style activity at workshops a lot. It seems to work well. It's quick and people have to think about, how would I, you know, sell this to someone in 3 minutes? Testing tips. So there's quite a few here. Provide enough context so they understand its purpose. I also tend to start with, I'm not testing you, I'm testing the thing or the process. So although I want to hear everything you've got to say in your experience, I don't want someone to feel bad if they don't get it. Let them know it's a work in progress. So again, that's not interrupting and saying, oh, it's not finished yet. That's just more, this is a work in progress, which is why I'm talking to you, because I want you to be as real and raw with me. I'm not precious. I just want to know how you feel about this and if it works. Yeah, avoid selling or explaining your idea. If you go too much into that, yeah, it becomes, I'm just trying to push this idea onto you to make you love it. Invite participants to treat your rough prototype as if it were real. So you want them to go and put those goggles on, even though they're paper and they're quite fragile. You want them to sort of test and immerse. And ask them to think out loud. I will always say, just talk me through what you're going there. I noticed that you're a bit hesitant about that bit over there. Tell me a little bit about that, or you know, that's an example. Be really curious. So if they say no, why not? Probably not in that way, but you can say, oh, and why is that? What would stop you doing that? If they say yes, in what situation would you do that? There's lots of ways to do that. And if they have a question like, how would this work? You could ask, you know, you could reflect back and say, how would you expect it to work? Probably don't keep doing that. It can be annoying as a person that's been tested on, but it does work to reflect back. And you're seeking that feedback. What doesn't work? How could this be better? If you could change one thing, and I'll often, you know, my structure of towards the end of testing, I'd say, if you could wave a magic wand over this and do anything you wanted, or, you know, you might word it as you've got endless supply of money, what would you do? Be aware of your own body language and facial reactions. Easier said than done, but yeah, your body language can say a lot as well if you're in person and online as well. It's, you know, going back before Julia mentioned, you know, sort of being present and genuinely interested. The way you dress as well. I tend to dress how the people that I'm going to talk to might dress. You know, as in I'm going to a sporting field, I probably would wear more sporty clothes than I definitely wouldn't turn up in a suit. And be ready to iterate. So sometimes you can do that on the spot. You might go, oh, okay, so let's just swap that. All right, is that what you're thinking? And that's quite good too. Post-test debrief. So as a team, if you're working with a group of people, which doesn't always happen, by the way, sometimes this is by yourself, you might ask things like, okay, we've just done that testing and we've heard all that. So what's some obvious quick wins for improvement? What are the key pain points that just came out there? What were the aspects that seemed to be the most appealing or valuable to the users? And are there any iterations for the prototype before the next round? So if you're going to be doing another round of testing, you know, in 2 days, you might need to prioritize, let's just swap this one with this, or let's do that for the next round so we could learn even more. And going from that, and I'm going to pause actually, because I've just talked so much. So I'll pause for a sec. Is there any questions or comments? Experiences of other people maybe you've been tested on or done some testing. No. All good. Just thought I would give that opportunity and hopefully no one's falling asleep yet. It is quite a long time. So the next part that I would tend to go with is features. So we're going to have our first go at, so this is heading more towards deliver. And when I say deliver in the human-centered design process, it's not deliver as in here's the complete thing ready to go, see you later. It's deliver what we're going to now build. So if it was a brochure, for example, this is what it should be like. This is the kinds of things. This is the imagery. This is the brand, for example. And getting to that, I would then, once you've sort of done that testing and you're thinking, yep, I've sort of gauged now, this is the idea, this is how it works, then then you can start thinking out more about, all right, what now are the features? And you can work through that as a bit of a group to say, what are the features to do this? So in this example that's on the screen here, which is the next part, we had done a bit of a brain dump of what's all the features. And we sort of thought about it more in stages. So if, let's go back to that sporting event example, if we're on our way or we're hearing about an event, what are all the features in our product or service that go in that stage, hearing about, I decide, I make a decision, I purchase, I go, or I'm on my way, I go. So there's different stages that someone goes through. So what are the features to make that happen? So, and quite often, this is the part that we don't always think out. So we might come up with an idea of, you know, there's this this website, and let's change the website. We're going to do this bit here, but you don't kind of necessarily go into thinking about what's all the things that need to happen to make that work. So it might be, you know, we need to have some change communication to let people know that use this all the time, that something's going to change. And then you're going into the different features. And I tend to, on this part here, have a bit of a breakdown. And this is, I think maybe it comes under lean tools, maybe Moscow, I think it's called, but must have, should have, would have, won't have. So you've got a pile of features, and you might have the U-Butte. This app is going to have the toilet app in it. So when I get to the event, I know where the nearest toilet is. I can buy all my food from the vendors on this app. And then when you're talking through it all, you realise actually to make that thing happen, there's a whole pile of features in the actual product itself that need to occur for that to happen. For example, if you were pushing social media about the event, it doesn't just happen. It's something that all these little features in the back end need to happen to make that occur. So you can get all the features out there and brainstorm. But when you get people to sort of think about, all right, if we were going to put this out there, we're not going for the big bang U-Butte best ever. We're going to start with what's called the minimum viable product, MVP, different to Sporting World. So we start to think in those features of, well, what's must have? So this idea will not happen without these features. So we must have them. They're a, you know, it's can't be not done. Should have, we probably should have them. So must have for me would be things like accessibility. That is a must have. That app should not be out there without that, because then it's not accessible to everyone. Should have, you know, it should have some, I can't even think of an example now, but it should have these things. And so I would put them in there as well for that MVP. And then would have is, it would be good. It would be really good to have those. So they would be what you would think would be in your future roadmap, I suppose. So if you were designing something that was going to go out, you know, in a month, those top 2 of must have and should have, those features need to be in that. But would have, I'd like it and it'd be great, but maybe for the first one, look, as much as I want the toilet app in there, maybe that's for the next iteration, because, you know, it's not vital as far, or it depends on who you are. It's not vital for making sure people can find a sport event, is an example. And won't have is, well, actually, no, don't really need that at all. That was just something that came out. MVP Canvas is a great way to then put that into a place where you can go, this is what we're going to do. So for this deliver part to be able to work with whoever's going to make the thing or change the thing, you know, what are the different personas that we've based this on? What are the journeys or scenarios? And, you know, what's our proposal? What do we think the results would be? Because that's what we want to find out. Some metrics, some features, and then cost and schedule. So you're starting to think more about making this happen. Going from that, also, if you want to go into some real detail, and I think this is actually a really great canvas to use as well. And there's probably a lot of people on the call that might have seen this one before, but it is out there to Google and use. The business model canvas will start to think more about making this real. So again, if we look to go back to this model of desirable, possible, viable, we're now getting into the viable and the possible. Is it within budget? You know, what's it going to cost? What's the return on investment? You know, do we even have the technology to make this possible? You know, is there people we need to partner with? Because actually, we don't want it just for our sport. It should really be across any sport. So who could we partner with, or some suppliers, or the types of activities we need to do? So there's a whole pile. I have popped that in there because I think that one is a good one for having something to actually go, this is what we want to do, and this is how it could work and what it's going to cost. So at that point, I'm going to throw back to everyone. So I've gone through very, very quickly of all kinds of tools and things and the process. And so I thought now might be a good time to have sort of a bit of time to actually throw back to everyone and see if there's any questions you might want to ask, or if anybody has experience in some of these areas that might want to deep dive into.
Val, this has been, it's Julia, it's been fascinating, this whole thing. It's mind-blowing, really, what I can do. My question's probably more about how do I get training in using the Miro board to do it really well. I delivered a couple of workshops recently, and one was with Softball, Softball Australia and all their states, and it was all online. And I did a 3-step sprint process and put them into breakouts. But they looked at a provocation statement. We came back, and yeah, I know this is just brilliant. I want to be able to use that. Yeah, so just getting that. And then we did how might we's, and they came up with their how might we's, and then they had to do a 2-minute pitch back to the group, and they kept their notes, which was good. And we sort of put some info in the chat, and then they've forwarded the notes onto Softball. It was great. It was a really good session and lots of engagement, but this would just make it even more engaging. So I love it. just the whole concept of a Miro board, which I've heard about, but I'd love some training in. So I'm assuming there's probably some programs online stuff we can do to learn how to use it. And does ASC have a license, Miro license? How does it all work?
So it is a purchase. Miro is a purchase, unless and when I say purchase, it doesn't mean that, as you can see, that every single person that comes on in your workshop needs to buy something.
Yeah.
So once you've got a license, you can set up your board, and you can share, as I did, a link and a password, and then collaborate like that.
Yeah.
ASC, it is approved. Obviously, I'm using it. With others, I think you can. I know you can register, and maybe you can do things for free. It's
anyway. I'll look into it. Look, it's just be great.
Yeah, it's cool, and there's a Miro Academy, and it has like quick bites. So it's got like 2 minutes intro to Miro.
Yeah.
2 minutes how to create a workshop, and you can see. Am I still screen sharing? Yes.
Yeah.
So when you do a board, this might be a good example. So when you do a board, there's a whole pile they call the Miroverse, where you can go in and you can actually just get a template.
Yeah, great. That's the next question. Yeah, cool.
And yeah, that's a whole that's a whole piece of work in one board, because it's endless. You can keep moving around. It's got all the user, different user research bits. It's, there's different techniques where you can actually get people to fill in little profiles as introducing each other to themselves. And you can upload things. It's, there's even like wireframing. So I can go in there and there's elements to wireframing. So there is a lot of stuff that you can do. I use it, as I said, as you can see, there's heaps of stuff in there, but I use it all the time. And
it's just getting a go right, and start off small, and it's great.
Yeah, it's also a good way to, if you're like me and you're forgetful, you can just go, it's all there. Say hello.
Fantastic. And so we will be able to access this for, like, if we use this same link, this stuff will stay there and we can use it, right?
You can have a play in there. Yeah. Even when I've tried to get people to think big, think a bit big, a picture of a brick. And I've said, now everyone, start just putting your ideas for what you could do with a brick, to warm people up, and then you sort of go through. And there's also, that's the voting thing. So I can say, on this section here, I want people to have 3 votes and they've got 2 minutes. There's a variety of things. I honestly could explore this forever, but
it's great. I mean, obviously.
Sorry. I hope that's helpful to others. I'm not a Miro. I'm not getting royalties or anything.
No, it's fantastic. Yeah, and it's good. And I agree with somebody's comment, Lena, in there about it's just been great solving problems a bit more creatively. And often when we think about how we work through things, I was looking through that going, this current project, I've gone through those steps. Probably not as much or in detail as that, or I didn't think of it using that lens. So that's been really helpful. So thank you. No, I've loved it. Absolutely. It's been great.
Thank you very much. I'd love to hear from others in the program that don't necessarily work in an office or anything. Maybe you're on a board, or and curious to know ways that you think this could be applied in your world. Don't be shy. That's okay.
I just missed a couple of minutes, but I thought I might share and ask a question about a project I worked on once where I don't think this pattern was followed at all. Was building some applications for Department of Veterans Affairs. And so it was a technology solution, had a full tech team on board. We're designing, we're developing, whatnot. But to go into the meetings with DVA about the project and progress and whatnot, had to go in through their reception. And I'd noticed that people would come to that reception to ask a question, and the security guards would say, "Oh, we don't have people here who answer questions. You have to go off to like the government shop front or something to talk to people." And the products that we were building at the time were kind of about chatbots, which answered the questions that the people were coming to the desk for. And I thought, you know what? You could save a whole lot of development effort by whacking a couple of people around, but there was no, it wasn't really a way to create a feedback loop to get that going. I think it stopped at that security guard. Person went away and the development was a completely separate process. So,
and absolute gold through observation, like how
Yeah.
much you must have learnt. I find the similar thing in a hospital emergency. If you've ever been there and sat and really just I observe and go, oh gosh. And so much of that, a lot of human-centered design actually has gone into some hospital waiting rooms and things like that. But yeah, just to observe things in a different way other than, oh God, I've got to sit and wait and I just might play on my phone. Sometimes just looking around the world around you in certain circumstances and go and get into that mindset and yeah, just watch and go, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Hey, Belle, on that, could you show us an example of one of the service blueprints? That starts to bring to people's attention, like you said, Kate, well, what else is happening? What's actually happening for the customer, and what do we and don't we have in place for those people? Put you on the spot, Belle.
Yeah. Do I have one that I can share?
Oh.
There is, I mean, I've got examples from past life event mapping. Really great examples if you Google DTA life events. I can share that link as well, but I'm sure I've got one in here somewhere, but yeah, really, I mean, I've recently done one. I won't show it necessarily, but I can tell you about it. Camp experience, probably sounds pretty straightforward. So a service blueprint doesn't just look at that customer journey, it actually looks at what happens behind the scenes as well. So you're looking at what is your staff doing or how are they interacting and what are the different, we'll call them touch points that people have to go through. So, as Kate said there, we can't assume everything is digital. It's just not the case. We're humans. We do things in person and we still fill out forms sometimes, actually a lot in sport. We still take a photo of our working with children card and text it to someone. Those kinds of things happen. But yeah, the life journey, the campus experience, for example, the stages might be, I'm going to be going to a camp. I am getting ready to go. So what do you have to do before you get there? Then I'm arriving. Do you just turn up and get a pass and go, thank you, and off you go? No, actually, if you even just delve into one stage and ask the teams that do that, tell me about that. What do you do? How does that work? And then you might talk to the athlete and say, what happened when you arrived? What did you do? What did you? And then you start to uncover, and, you know, it happens all the time that actually this person does this and that person does that. And actually now with, you know, with my thinking head on, we could probably do that bit a bit better, couldn't we? Or, and before you know it, the people that do it, they're the ones that are the experts, like what I talked about before. They've got some great ideas that start to surface. And you also realize, not necessarily in that example, but when you map something, you go, oh my God, okay, so, all right, so a coach has to, they have to register for that platform, then they go on there, then they have to shopping cart over here and pay to do that coaching course, and then they go off and they do that. Oh, they've got to do the logbook as well, that's over there. And then you realize that all these touch points, it's just so complex. And sport is complex. It is incredibly complex. A little like health, you sort of have, you know, even federal, state, local government, same with organisations, all making different decisions or using different tools. And I guess it's a way to kind of look holistically and go, that's the experience that's happening. Here's some pain points, and then turn those pain points into opportunities to go, we can make this better. How might we do blah? Sorry, I just went really like.
No, that's good, Bill. Thanks. And you've been working with quite a lot of sports since you started here. Like, have you found many sport executives going through those aha moments, or, oh, well, actually, we thought that was the problem, but wow, that accreditation process is a clanger, and we didn't realize it was actually such a deterrent for people getting involved? Or have you found that?
Yeah, and in fact, a change happened on a piece of work as a result of the coaching experience, for example, that did you know that this person has to go off to not just here, but this other one here, and then they go over to, say, Sport Integrity. There's another register and log in. So they're going over there, then they go off to this other learning place, and they had to take a screenshot, upload back at the other place to say they've completed that. And as a result of that, when we went through it, they were like, oh, that's okay. And it got fixed. It was just, and sometimes you're thinking, that's massive, and we can't do that. And then you throw a couple of developers in the mix and the different, you know, voices, and they go, oh, that's not hard. You can fix that. There's a way for that to return the certificate back into their profile to say they're an accredited coach now. Yeah. And next minute, you've actually just made a little difference to that person's world. As, you know, that's a small change, you know, in the scheme of things. But yeah, hearing things like that. And I mean, I won't get you, Kate, to go into stories, but I know you work on absolutely amazing, innovative products that, you know, make a difference to people. Yeah. Hope that answers or helps things.
It's just always worth reaching out and finding what other people know. And sometimes as a dev, people assume something will be really easy and it's really hard. And sometimes they think it'll be really hard, but it will be really easy. So you just have to ask.
And if you can loop, you know, developers and IT people in early on, makes a huge difference. Don't sort of, you know, waiting until the end, and there's nothing worse than handing something over to that doesn't translate. So you've actually lose all that work. And I mean, yeah, look, I won't go into it too much, but there is times when a decision maker could, you know, way back, I've had things where decision makers can also go, that's good, but we're going to do this. And you can at least say, well, I have provided all the evidence that I don't think that's a good idea. And yeah.
This is brilliant and good. Can I just share one other example of a current project that the coaching and officiating team, we've just had a national roundtable with wheelchair sports. They're looking to develop, well, collaboratively, a generic, was going to be a coaching module for coaches of anyone in wheelchair to just around fundamental wheelchair skills, because they're all the sports are the same thing, you know, wheelchair setup, how to move the chair, how to stop the chair, how to, you know, all these things. Great roundtable. You know, at the start it was just for coaches, and now we've realised that the target audience is coaches, teachers, parents, people in a wheelchair. And we've even moved from an online module, which is behind a gateway, which is going to cause all these other things, to maybe it's something else. It's series of videos and instructional, you know, PDFs, and it's, you know, a couple of testimonials and some storytelling and some how-to videos. So we're just at that stage, Belle, and going, gosh, where do we go to? What do we do next? How do we do this? So it's even being aware internally. I don't know whether we can access you to come into a session to help us with this next piece, because we're right at that point of going, what is this thing? We've got people in wheelchairs who have helped us in this early sort of just catalyst, stimulus thinking about what it could be, but we're just, we're only at the start. So this has been great from that perspective, but just an example that we probably do these things every day, and we just need to use a HCD process. It's fantastic. Yeah, love it.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
And we all have people, I'll say frontline. I don't know what the word is on the coalface, whatever you want to term it, but people that work with and are in there, like if you're a volunteer down, I'm just going to say down at the Oval, who, you know, is the person that's doing the draw, you hear you have got the best intel. It's just, what do you do with that? And I think that's where some of these tools and the processes, when I was at Services Australia, I would always involve people that work in the shop fronts, and I would go and sit in shop fronts, and because they hear these things, it's like complaints registers. We have spreadsheets of complaints all the time in all our places. Do we do anything with them? Maybe we try to reply and make that and appease that person. But do we actually, do we do anything with it? Not always, but I think sometimes if you were to get that register and do some of these processes, like, okay, let's theme them. Let's now create a how might we. Let's now come up with ideas. Next minute, you could be solving them, and yes, you might make someone's job redundant as a process because they don't have to collect complaints as much. It's one of those things. There's intel everywhere, but how do you get it, and what do you do with it? I mean, any other comments or ways that you might be able to do this? Otherwise, I will say a great place to do a course, if you want a free one, is IDEO. If you do like IDEO free human-centered design course, they do have one. It is, you know, self-paced, but it will give you a toolkit. It gets you to actually do it. So you choose like a topic or a problem that you want to work on, but it's free. So it could be a good one if you want to use it. In that Miro board as well, I've put some resources you might see over to the side. And they're different websites and things that have tools. I swear every department, agency in government has their own toolkit. There's something about putting your own branding on something. I am a big believer in just there's stuff already there. Just use what's there. You know, just acknowledge it if you. But a lot of it is like is it called Free Commons or something that you can utilize? Yeah. Okay. Well, it's fairly quiet otherwise. I so badly wanted to hear from some sports people out there. But yes, thank you very much. And yeah, although I'm 10 minutes early, I thought I would give the opportunity that at the end there to let everyone have a bit of a chat or open up for discussion. So if there's not any other questions, yeah, we'll take an early mark and go and have lunch. Thanks, everyone. And I might just hop on. I'll give you my details anyway. I'll send them through. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Belle. Awesome.
Thank you.